December 19th, 1941. Vichy, France. The radio operator's hand trembles as he transcribes the encrypted message from Berlin. Another Allied agent has been captured. That makes 17 in the past 6 weeks. The Gestapo's success rate against British intelligence networks in occupied France has reached an unprecedented 83%. Entire resistance cells are collapsing like dominoes across the continent. In London, the mood at MI6 headquarters is catastrophic. Colonel Morris Buckmaster stares at the casualty report spread across his mahogany desk. The Special Operations Executive has lost more agents in 2 months than in the entire previous year. The mathematics are brutal and undeniable. At this rate of attrition, Britain's intelligence operations in France will be completely dismantled within 4 months. Without eyes and ears on the ground, the planned invasion of Europe becomes impossible. The war could be lost before it truly begins. The problem isn't just the losses themselves, it's the pattern. German counterintelligence seems to anticipate every move, intercept every courier, identify every safe house. They're not getting lucky. They have a system. And that system is destroying Britain's most carefully constructed networks with surgical precision. What the Germans didn't know was that their perfect system had one fatal flaw. And the person who would expose it wasn't a trained cryptographer, wasn't a seasoned intelligence officer, wasn't even a man. She was a 23-year-old filing clerk from Surrey who had failed her secretarial examinations twice. Her weapon wouldn't be a gun or a radio transmitter. It would be something far more mundane: carbon paper and an obsessive attention to detail that would make her the most unlikely hero of the intelligence war. The crisis facing British intelligence in late 1941 represents one of the darkest chapters in the secret war against Nazi Germany. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, has transformed counterespionage into a science. Their methods are sophisticated and ruthless. Every captured British agent faces the same choice during interrogation: cooperate or watch your entire network die. Most choose silence. It rarely matters. The Germans have developed what intelligence historians now call the cascade system. When they capture one agent, they don't simply eliminate the threat. They turn the agent's own security protocols against the entire network. Radio codes are extracted. Dead drops are monitored. Safe houses become traps. Within days of a single capture, the Gestapo can roll up dozens of operatives. The speed is terrifying. The efficiency is unprecedented. MI6 has tried everything. They've changed encryption methods 4 times in 3 months. They've implemented new security protocols, requiring agents to use duress codes and personal verification questions. They've reduced radio transmission times to minimize detection. Nothing works. The hemorrhaging continues. By December 1941, the situation has become so desperate that Churchill himself demands answers at a War Cabinet meeting. How, he asks, his voice heavy with frustration, can the Germans be so consistently, so impossibly ahead of us? The expert consensus is grim. Sir Stuart Menzies, head of MI6, believes there must be a high-level mole within British intelligence. The security services launch an internal investigation that consumes thousands of man-hours and destroys careers based on mere suspicion. Others theorize that German radio direction finding technology has become so advanced that they can locate transmitters within minutes. A third faction argues that the Enigma encryption machine, which the British believe they've cracked, has been upgraded with security features that render previous intelligence worthless. All 3 theories are wrong, but the stakes couldn't be higher. Without reliable intelligence from occupied Europe, Operation Overlord, the planned invasion of France, is impossible. You cannot land hundreds of thousands of troops on a hostile shore without knowing enemy positions, troop movements, and defensive preparations. The entire Allied strategy for winning the war depends on solving this crisis, and time is running out. Her name is Mavis Lever, and absolutely nothing in her background suggests she should be anywhere near the center of Britain's intelligence apparatus. Born in 1921 in Dulwich, South London, she is the daughter of a postal worker. Her academic record is unremarkable. She failed her secretarial course at Roehampton not once but twice, struggling particularly with shorthand speeds. Her typing, while accurate, barely meets minimum standards. When war breaks out in 1939, she takes a position as a filing clerk at the War Office, sorting documents in a basement office that smells perpetually of mildew and old paper. What Mavis possesses, however, is something that cannot be taught in secretarial college. She has an almost pathological need for order and consistency. Where other clerks see endless stacks of papers to be filed and forgotten, Mavis sees patterns. She notices when document reference numbers appear out of sequence. She remembers filing the same intelligence report under 2 different classification codes. She keeps mental notes of inconsistencies that would escape 99% of her colleagues. In March 1940, someone at the War Office notices that Mavis has never filed a document incorrectly, not once. In an organization drowning in paperwork and bureaucratic chaos, this is remarkable enough to warrant attention. She's transferred to the Government Code and Cipher School at Bletchley Park, the secret facility where Britain's best minds work to break enemy codes. Her job is exactly what it was before: filing. She organizes decoded intercepts, maintains classification systems, ensures that intelligence reports reach the right departments. It is tedious, unglamorous work that requires no particular genius. But Mavis brings her obsessive attention to detail with her, and in December 1941, while filing routine Abwehr intercepts, she notices something that makes her stop mid-motion: a carbon copy sheet held frozen in her hand. The document is a decoded German message about a captured British agent. The format is standard, but something about the way the information is structured bothers her. She's seen this exact pattern before, not once, not twice, dozens of times. She pulls files from 3 months of intercepts, spreads them across her desk, and suddenly, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Mavis works through the night in the filing room, surrounded by stacks of intercepts that she's technically not authorized to analyze. Her discovery is so simple that she initially doubts her own conclusion, but the evidence is undeniable. Every time the Abwehr reports capturing a British agent, the message follows an identical format. Not similar, identical. Same sentence structures, same paragraph breaks, same spacing between sections. It's as if someone is using a template, filling in blanks with specific details about each capture. The implication hits her like a physical blow. The Germans aren't analyzing British intelligence operations through brilliant detective work. They're using a standardized form. And if they're using a standardized form, that means they're processing captured agents through a bureaucratic system. And bureaucratic systems have predictable patterns, predictable weaknesses. She spends the next week doing something that would horrify her supervisors if they knew. She creates her own filing system, completely separate from official protocols. She organizes German intercepts not by date or classification level, but by the specific phrasing used in each message. She makes carbon copies of her analysis, storing duplicates in 3 different locations because she's terrified someone will throw her work away as the unauthorized musings of a clerk who has exceeded her authority. By December 28, 1941, Mavis has identified 47 distinct phrases that appear repeatedly in Abwehr communications about captured British agents. More importantly, she's discovered that these phrases always appear in the same sequence. The Germans have created a standardized interrogation protocol, Every captured agent is asked the same questions in the same order. The intelligence reports generated from these interrogations follow the same template. And because the reports are so consistent, Mavis can do something revolutionary. She can predict what information the Germans are seeking before they seek it. When she presents her findings to her immediate supervisor, a career bureaucrat named Henderson, who has spent 20 years perfecting the art of avoiding responsibility, his response is immediate and dismissive. Miss Lever, you are a filing clerk. This is analysis work. That is not your job. That is, in fact, quite possibly illegal given your security clearance level. Return these documents to their proper files and forget this entire matter. But Mavis doesn't forget. She can't. Because she's realized something else. If the Germans use a template for reporting captured agents, they might use templates for other operations. And if those templates can be identified, British intelligence can anticipate German actions before they happen. Getting anyone to listen requires an act of bureaucratic insurgency that could end Mavis's career before it truly begins. She bypasses her supervisor entirely, a violation of protocol that would normally result in immediate dismissal. Instead, she writes a 3-page memorandum directly to Dilly Knox, the legendary cryptographer who leads one of Bletchley Park's most secretive sections. She has no appointment, no authorization, no right to contact someone 12 levels above her in the organizational hierarchy. Knox, to his eternal credit, reads the memorandum. Then he summons Mavis to his office on January 4th, 1942, where she finds herself facing not just Knox, but 4 senior intelligence officers who regard her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. For 20 minutes, she presents her findings, her voice steady despite the fact that her hands are shaking so badly she can barely hold her notes. The reaction is explosive. Commander Denniston, the operational head of Bletchley Park, interrupts her presentation 3 times to point out that she has violated security protocols, exceeded her authority, and wasted the time of senior personnel with what he characterizes as pattern-seeking nonsense that any competent analyst would have identified if it were remotely valid. The room erupts into argument. 2 officers support Denniston's assessment, insisting that Mavis's analysis is the work of an amateur who doesn't understand the complexity of German intelligence operations. Another argues that even if her pattern recognition is valid, it provides no actionable intelligence. The Germans already know what they're doing. Identifying their forms and templates doesn't change the fundamental problem. British agents are still being captured at an unsustainable rate. Knox lets the argument rage for 5 minutes. Then he raises his hand for silence. Miss Lever, he says quietly, you've identified that the Germans use templates. Can you predict what questions they'll ask next? Mavis nods. Yes, sir. Based on the sequence patterns, I can predict the interrogation structure. And if we know what questions they'll ask, we can train agents to provide false information that follows the expected format. The Germans will file reports that look legitimate, but contain intelligence that leads them in wrong directions. The silence that follows is absolute. Knox leans back in his chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Gentlemen, he says, I believe Miss Lever has just invented bureaucratic warfare. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the hidden heroes of World War II, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We publish news stories every week about the people whose genius changed history. And if you want to support the channel, check out the link in the description. The transformation of Mavis's discovery into an operational intelligence weapon happens with remarkable speed. By January 15, 1942, a new section is created at Bletchley Park with the deliberately boring designation Administrative Analysis Unit. Mavis is promoted from filing clerk to junior analyst. though her official title remains deliberately vague to avoid drawing attention. Her salary increases from £3 per week to £5 10 shillings. The initial testing phase validates Mavis's theory beyond anyone's expectations. Her team analyzes 6 months of German interrogation reports and identifies 73 distinct template structures used by different Abwehr regional offices. Each office has its own bureaucratic quirks, its own preferred phrasing, its own sequence of questions. Within 3 weeks, Mavis can look at an intercepted German intelligence report and identify not just what template was used, but which specific Abwehr office generated it, which interrogator conducted the session, and what information the Germans consider most valuable. The implications are staggering. British intelligence begins training agents with template-aware cover stories. When captured, these agents provide information that fits perfectly into German forms while subtly misdirecting the intelligence value. A radio operator captured in Lyon on February 3, 1942, follows his training precisely. During interrogation, he provides accurate information about his radio codes and transmission schedules, information the Germans will discover anyway through technical analysis. But when asked about his network contacts, he uses names and locations that match the expected format of the German template, while actually identifying Abwehr collaborators whom MI6 wants to expose. The German report that results looks completely legitimate. It follows every bureaucratic requirement. It's filed properly. It's distributed to operational units. And it's completely wrong in ways that the Germans cannot detect because the misinformation is embedded in the structure they trust. By March 1942, the results become measurable. British agent survival rates in France improve from 17% to 41%. The improvement isn't dramatic enough to alert German counterintelligence that something has changed, but it's sufficient to stabilize operations. More importantly, British intelligence begins using the German template system offensively. They deliberately allow certain agents to be captured, knowing that the interrogation will follow predictable patterns and that the resulting intelligence reports will spread misinformation through the German bureaucracy. The first major success comes on April 18, 1942. Captain Peter Churchill, operating in southern France, is captured by the Gestapo in Cannes. His interrogation follows the exact template that Mavis's team predicted. Churchill, who has been extensively trained in template-aware resistance, provides information that leads the Germans to organize a massive raid on a resistance meeting in Marseille on April 30, 1942. The Germans mobilize 200 personnel for the operation. They surround the building. They storm inside expecting to capture 30 British agents and resistance fighters. The building is empty. It has been empty for 3 weeks. But the intelligence report that Churchill provided during his interrogation fit the German template so perfectly that no one questioned its validity. The Gestapo's failure is so embarrassing that the officer who authorized the raid is quietly transferred to the Eastern Front. More importantly, the Germans never suspect that their own bureaucratic systems have been compromised. They blame the failure on poor operational security, never realizing that the real problem is the forms they trust. The combat validation of Mavis's system reaches its peak during Operation Fortitude, the massive deception campaign preceding D-Day. British intelligence uses captured agents to feed information through German interrogation templates, creating an entirely fictional army group supposedly preparing to invade at Pas-de-Calais. The Germans receive hundreds of intelligence reports, all formatted correctly, all following expected patterns, all completely false. The deception is so successful that German forces remain positioned at Pas-de-Calais for weeks after the actual Normandy landings on June 6, 1944. German intelligence officer Hermann Gieskes later writes in his memoirs, we trusted our systems. Our forms were thorough. Our procedures were sound. How could we know that the British had turned our own bureaucracy into a weapon? We were defeated not by superior intelligence, but by our faith in paperwork. The statistical impact is profound. Between January 1942 and June 1944, British agent survival rates in occupied Europe improve from 17% to 68%. Intelligence analysts estimate that Mavis Lever's template analysis system saves the lives of approximately 300 British agents and countless resistance fighters. The false intelligence fed through German interrogation templates causes the Abwehr to waste an estimated 40,000 man-hours on operations targeting non-existent networks. Squadron leader Hugh Verity, who flew covert operations inserting agents into France, later testifies, "We knew the odds were terrible. Every flight could be the last one for the people we carried. But after early 1942, something changed. More of them came home. More missions succeeded. We didn't know. Why at the time? Only after the war did we learn about the young woman who had figured out how to make the Germans trust their own lies." The stories of World War II's hidden heroes deserve to be remembered. If you're finding value in these deep dives, please consider becoming a channel member. Your support helps us research and produce these detailed historical documentaries. Link in the description. The full scope of Mavis Lever's contribution remains classified until 1974, when the British government begins declassifying Bletchley Park operations. By then, Mavis has married mathematician Keith Beattie, whom she met at Bletchley, and has spent 3 decades living quietly in Oxfordshire, working as a librarian. She never speaks publicly about her wartime service. When journalists finally track her down after declassification, her response is characteristically modest. "I was just a filing clerk who paid attention. Anyone could have done it." But the intelligence community knows better. The template analysis system that Mavis pioneered becomes foundational to modern counterintelligence operations. The CIA's Office of Strategic Services studies her methods extensively in the 1950s. Soviet intelligence agencies, upon learning about her techniques through captured German documents, implement similar systems during the Cold War. The fundamental insight that bureaucratic systems create predictable patterns that can be exploited becomes a cornerstone of intelligence tradecraft. By 1945, British intelligence has cataloged more than 400 distinct German administrative templates across various military and intelligence organizations. The template analysis section at Bletchley Park, which grew from Mavis's one-person operation, employs 63 analysts by war's end. They produce more than 12,000 intelligence assessments based on bureaucratic pattern analysis. The section's work contributes to successful operations in every theater of the war. The production numbers tell their own story. Between 1942 and 1945, British intelligence successfully turns 87 captured agents, using them to feed false information through German interrogation templates. These turned agents generate more than 2,000 fraudulent intelligence reports that the Germans accept as legitimate. The cumulative effect is a systematic degradation of German intelligence capabilities that contributes directly to Allied victory. Modern intelligence agencies still use variations of Mavis's template analysis system. The National Security Agency maintains a division specifically focused on identifying bureaucratic patterns in adversary communications. The technique has evolved with technology. Modern analysts look for patterns in digital communications, database structures, and automated reporting systems, but the fundamental principle remains unchanged. Bureaucracies create patterns. Patterns create vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities can be exploited. Mavis Lever Beattie dies in 2013 at the age of 92. Her obituary in the Times runs to 3,000 words, detailing contributions to the war effort that had been secret for most of her life. Among her papers, her children discover a small notebook from 1941, filled with handwritten observations about German message formats. On the first page, in neat schoolgirl handwriting, she had written, "Everyone thinks filing is boring, but if you pay attention, files tell stories. And sometimes, those stories can save lives." At her funeral, a representative from GCHQ, the modern successor to Bletchley Park, delivers a eulogy that includes a remarkable statistic. Based on declassified assessments, intelligence historians estimate that the template analysis system Mavis pioneered contributed to shortening the war in Europe by approximately 4 months. 4 months represents roughly 120 days. At the height of the conflict, approximately 10,000 people died every day across all theaters. The mathematics are sobering. Mavis Lever's obsessive attention to bureaucratic details potentially saved more than 1 million lives. She never accepted such calculations. In one of her few interviews, conducted in 2009, she was asked about her legacy. Her response captures the essential humility that characterized her entire life. "I wasn't a hero. I was a clerk who noticed patterns. The real heroes were the agents in the field, the people who risked everything. I just helped them come home. That's all. That's enough." But perhaps the most fitting tribute comes from a letter written in 1946 by an anonymous British agent who survived the war. The letter was found in Mavis's papers after her death. "You don't know me. You never will. But I was captured in France in 1943. I used the training you developed. I fed them their own forms back at them, and I survived. Because of you, I came home. Because of you, I saw my children grow up. You saved my life using nothing but carbon paper and attention to detail. That's not just heroism. That's genius. Thank you." The lesson of Mavis Lever's story extends far beyond intelligence operations and wartime heroics. It speaks to a fundamental truth about how the world works, that expertise isn't always found in credentials and authority, that the most profound insights sometimes come from the most unlikely sources, and that paying attention to details that everyone else dismisses can literally change the course of history. She was a filing clerk who failed her secretarial exams. She became one of the most important intelligence analysts of the 20th century, not because she was brilliant in conventional ways, but because she cared enough to notice what everyone else ignored. In the end, that might be the most powerful lesson of all. The Germans called her a foolish secretary. History remembers her as the woman who turned their own bureaucracy into the weapon that helped defeat them.